Aloha mai,
Mahalo nui. Mahalo.
Aloha. Good morning. I feel so thrilled to be here. When we first started looking for a place to have this Hōʻike, it was a lot of work, and we were able to find a partner, Jackie and her KETV team to host us here in Kaua'i. And I'm thrilled to introduce the Mayor of Kaua'i, Mayor Kaua'i, to say some welcome with a few words.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, take this opportunity to give out a few thank yous. First and foremost, can we give a huge round of applause for the staff here at the Sheraton? I mean, these folks really worked hard to pull it all together. And of course, to Jackie and the KEDB team, big mahalo to all of them. But most importantly, we are so honored and blessed that you folks took the time to come from both near and far to be here on Kaua'i to talk about digital equity. You know, in 2003, Senator Inouye approached a few of us that were, I guess, in the younger age bracket, the pre-millennials. And it was because he wasn't happy with the way and direction that young people were getting involved in their community. So I was one of them that he strong-armed. And one of our first projects was to meet early in a warehouse at Ron's Electric to pack up school supplies. And we didn't expect to see the senator at the warehouse, but there he was. And before we started the day, he said, you know, we're doing this because when I was a young boy, and I was going to grade school, I went to class and I noticed that my friend and classmate who was of Filipino ancestry wasn't there on the first day of school. The second day of school came and went, his friend wasn't there. A whole week went by, and he's wondering what happened to his friend. Finally, his friend showed up and he asked him, how come you didn't come to school? And the boy said, no more pencil, no more paper. And from that moment, something resonated in Senator Inouye's heart that he made it a mission that no child ever get left behind because they don't have the right tools to succeed. And that the tools to success shouldn't be something that's reserved for the wealthy. That the biggest job that a leader can do is just level the playing field. Senator Inouye was key in creating KEDB, and many of us elected officials, we strive and yearn to figure out what kind of legacy we're going to leave behind. I can tell you that story and Senator Inouye's mission, which became Aloha Ike, will always live on in my heart. And that's why we're here today. The tools of education and being successful in this modern day has changed. Today's day, having access to broadband IT infrastructure and having the devices and having the training and education to use those tools is today's paper and pencil. So for all of you folks that have made it a mission to make sure that none of our kids, none of our kupuna, none of our people are left behind, and made it a mission to level the playing field, from the bottom of my heart, we are eternally grateful. Thank you very much. God bless, and aloha. You guys wanted me to do this now? Should I read this whole thing? I'm not going to read this whole thing because it just spoke from the heart, and this is going to just dry it all out. I'm going to dry it up cooler. But the most important thing is not all the whereases, it's the now therefore. So now therefore I direct S.K. Kaua'i, Mayor, County of Kaua'i, do hereby proclaim the week of October 2nd to the 6th, 2023 as Digital Inclusion Week, and we encourage the people of Kaua'i and across the state to join us in raising awareness of digital equity and internet connectivity challenges and taking all possible steps to bridge the digital divide. Thank you very much.
Our discussion will be moderated by Chung Cheng. He's the Strategic Broadband Coordinator. And our guests today are Bert Lum, State Digital Equity Coordinator for the Hawaiʻi Broadband and Digital Equity Office. Garrett Yoshimi, the Vice President for Information Technology and Chief Information Officer at the University of Hawaii. And we're also hearing from Jaron Tengen, Office of the Chairman, Department of Hawaiian Homeland Security. I'll turn the time over to John. Sorry, one little bit of housekeeping for everyone. Bathrooms are right down the hall to the right. If you need any help with anything, the KDB team is right here and they'll help you answer any questions that you have. And we break out into different discussions. We're going to go to the Malco room, which is, some of us will be in here, some of us will be straight down the hall, and there's the same purple signs that we've seen all over indicating where we're going. So just follow the hallway down and you'll find it. Turn the time over to Chum.
Thank you, Nate. As you may know, we have a lot of federal monies coming into the state. So what we want to do today is hear from various state agencies on what they're doing, their timeline for their efforts, and how is what they're going to do help the state. So first I want to start with Garrett, and for him to provide a UH perspective on broadband-related work that he's doing.
Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it. Turn it on first. Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate it very much. And let me add my thanks to the hosts of Kaua'i. Appreciate it very much. This stuff takes a ton of work. It's all behind the scenes. And if you ever put one on before, this is like 1 or 2 days of event and weeks of work that goes into it. So thank you very much. In particular, our hosts, our KB hosts, Mayor, great to see you. We have visitors from all over the place. I think as far west as Japan and Guam, and then going east, we have some folks from the continent as well. Welcome. So for those of you that haven't had a chance to say hello, I'm Jack Clymers, our interim FPO from representing APA, sitting in the back there. And he's probably gonna regret telling me this, but today's his birthday, so happy birthday to him. So let me give you a couple of quick remarks in terms of where we are currently sitting on some of the larger projects. I'll speak primarily to the infrastructure-related projects. As Chum noted, there's a ton of federal money that has been allocated to Hawaii. The majority of it is formula-based, so the numbers are set, the numbers are fixed for Hawaii, and it's really our duty at this point to execute federal money. So federal money is not free money, always comes with stuff, the things you have to do to actually get the money flowing. That is a challenge at times, but you know what? It's still a pile of money. To give you some perspective from the infrastructure point of view, it represents about $400 million in federal money that's coming our way. It will likely get expended mostly on the tail end, but over the next 3 or 4 years. But the work that we're doing now is about making or preparing the plans and the mechanics to get that money spent, to get it spent equitably across our entire state, to make sure everybody, yes, Kaua'i included, gets benefits from the investment. In particular, one of the major pieces that's going on right now is we are working to get a new inter-island cable system in the water. Super important to us. And I don't have to remind any of the folks of Kaua'i, October 2019, it's like burning everybody's memory right now, and probably going to be at the top of everybody's slide deck when we talk about infrastructure. But it's that kind of event where Kaua'i was literally cut off from comms for a good part of a day and bits and pieces after that. Just not where we want to be. You know, the importance to education, healthcare, commerce, airlines. So for those that didn't know, if that outage went for probably another day, Hawaii would have to limit its flights in and out of the airport because they all communicate back with the home base. So without the communications, super critical infrastructure and services just don't happen anymore. So talk about back to the Stone Age. That's exactly what we want to prevent. So one of the large projects that we are moving forward with, and this is about a little over a quarter of the total amount of federal funds coming in, is funding coming from the U.S. Treasury in the Capital Projects Fund. It is about $100 million coming from Treasury, the majority of which is going to be dedicated to helping build that new inter-island cable system. Several benefits as a result of that, not just getting connected, so all of the islands gets connected to that inter-island cable system, but we work with all of our carriers to make sure that the infrastructure on island as well as back to the mainland gets interconnected as a result of our efforts. Kind of a side benefit, and this is also really cool. Not a bunch of public discussions yet, but as we're going through the effort to build this inter-island system and actually get into contracts, we were actually hoping to be able to announce it today. Not quite there yet, so sorry. Our contracts and legal trolls have taken their toll on us, but we hope to beat them down very soon and get to contracts very soon. But once we get to contracts, we also have significant interest in new trans-Pacific landings as well. And this is other people's money. This is additional trans-Pacific connections coming to Hawaii that are, we have significant discussions underway with several interested parties. And then hopefully some of them will actually pull the trigger and make the financial commitment to make it happen and get us some additional trans-Pacific connections back to not just the mainland, but to Asia, Australia, New Zealand. And so super important for us, not just to make sure our islands don't get disconnected, but also to make sure our state remains connected to the global economy. Big deal for everybody. So it's a long-term investment, and again, we hope to be awarded contract fairly soon. I'd like to say any day now, but I'll probably jinx myself. Get into another conference call with attorneys and say, you're not supposed to say that. But coming very soon, and then once we get awarded contracts into place, we'll be able to share a lot more details about the effort that's going to go into the inter-island cable system. Of note, for each of the counties, so remember, submarine cable has to come on land someplace, has to cross public lands. Permitting is super important, so it's critically important. We work with all the counties, we work with the state government agencies to make sure that we do it right, we do it correctly, and that we really provide the benefit without impacting each of our island shores as we come ashore. One of the key points on the inter-island segment is also to make sure that we provide an interconnection point for any of our carriers to make that connection at a facility that is controlled in the public sector. So super important effort for us going forward, and that's one of the major things that and again, I told you several years, the cable takes at least 3 years to build. So we're getting it rolling, we're getting it started, lots of effort, so it's kind of a slow roll until we actually get the cable in the water. The other large piece is called the BEAD project. So BEAD stands for Broadband Equity Access and Deployment. I keep getting these acronyms with these federal awesome acronyms all over the place. But you got to be able to remember them, otherwise you're spewing acronyms and everybody's in the audience. What the hell is he talking about? But the BEAD project is focused primarily on getting last mile connections built where they do not exist. So the focus and primary priorities for the BEAD project is to make sure that all of the current unserved and underserved residential locations have access to high-speed internet. Well, we talk about high-speed internet, at least 100 megabit, down 20 megabits up, preferably more. We want to get everybody connected. We would love to say Hawaii is the first state that has a gig economy because we're gigabit connected all over the place. For those of you that remember a broadband study back in 2008, it was actually in that study as an objective and a mission. We're not there yet, but we at least have some help from the federal government to move that along. One of the other critical pieces of the BEAD project is to make sure that we connect our, what's this? Another acronym, CAIs, Community Anchor Institutions. So the best way to describe it is places that people gather, places that the public can access, people can gather to get access to the high-speed internet if they don't have it at their homes or they're traveling away from their homes, but that also are places that can receive services and supports, the wraparound services that are absolutely necessary to get people connected. Everybody talks about getting connected as the hurdle, but getting connected is just the first piece. The digital equity themes of today's and tomorrow's discussions are super critical to make sure, not just getting access, getting the ability to subscribe and pay for internet service. That's not the single hurdle. That's just the start. In order to make effective and meaningful use of that access, you have to have all the wraparound services available. Make sure you have devices. You can use devices. You know what you're doing when you use the devices. You're not afraid to get online because you're afraid of security threats. Who's going to do what to my data? So all of those things are layers of services that are critically important that comes in with the digital equity stuff that really is the subject of our event today and tomorrow. I'll stop yammering there. This is the other part of digital equity, by the way. It's really great. We carry this stuff around, but I see letters and dots right now. So this is the other part of digital equity. You got to be able to use the devices and see what's going on. And carrying around, the 20-inch laptop just doesn't really work for me. So unfortunately, I'm going to probably escape a little bit later this morning. But I do have several members of my team that are here for the duration. They're actually sitting right in the middle. So Susan, Gwen, and Mike are sitting in the middle of the table. Happy to answer any questions. I know they have some discussions at some of the breakout sessions to go into detail for the BEAD stuff. Lots of work in front of us. And like I said, federal money. We have this long ramp of stuff we have to do to plan, prepare, plan again, prepare some more, and then finally get to be able to put fiber and cable into the ground, actually make the connections occur. I'm gonna pause there, turn it back over to Chung, and then again, I'm sure there are questions to follow up.
Thank you, Garrett. Yes, we'll follow up with questions after all of the panel members have presented their information. Next, I want to move on to Bert and talk more about the digital equity part of the broadband initiatives. Bert?
Mahalo, Tom. And I want to mahalo everybody for joining us today. This is really pretty historic because, over the course of the last 3+ years, we, for the most part, have been meeting virtually. And to have everybody sort of in person in the room, this is like a real life. They sometimes call it IRL, occurrence of the Broadband Hōʻike. So this is a really proud moment, I think, for me, and I'm glad that you all are able to participate in this. I do want to thank Mayor Kawakami for being an integral part of this, and Jackie and her team, for pulling all of this together, and of course our team, all the work that was going on in the office to make this happen was quite phenomenal. I do want to thank Garrett for starting up, because I do want to remind you all that though he didn't say it, there is a quiz, and many of the things that he did say are going to be a part of the Jeopardy quiz that's going to be given later on. So that's for real. And I love the technical terms that Garrett uses, and I will kind of riff off of that. And the technical term that I really like is supercritical. Now, hypercritical. Now, one of the things that our team, the Hawaiʻi Broadband and Digital Equity Office, has been working on is really largely informed by the National Telecommunications Information Administration in the form of the Digital Equity Planning Grant. And so what happened, I guess, as a result of work that's been done nationally, and of course in recognition of all the things that happened as a result of the pandemic, and stay-at-home order, having the inability to access these digital technologies, the Digital Equity Act was really embraced by the federal government to the tune where they wanted to see digital equity start to really take shape within all of our communities. But to get that started was the Digital Equity Plan. Now, there was a lot of small efforts going on across the country in the form of things like digital literacy classes. I remember during the start of the pandemic, Brad Bennett and his team were trying to get hardware devices into people's hands. There were efforts that were going on during the pandemic to do Wi-Fi on wheels. And these were all largely driven by individuals seeing a need to close that digital divide. So what the NTIA did was they issued some key programs, one of which we applied for and were able to get, and this is the Digital Equity Plan. I proudly hold up the plan itself because this is a monumental, I'll repeat, monumental effort to put together. And the goal that I had was to get it released to everybody before October 1st. And I did it with the purpose of you all obviously reading it over the weekend before coming here, right? Let me see a show of hands who have all taken a look at it. At least opened up the file. Read the whole thing. Okay, so I will be doing a session right after this to go over what we call the public comment period. So this is stuff that's actually, and you know, and Garrett knows this very well. You know, when the federal government issues, let's say, notice of funding opportunities, these are like, consider it like laws that we need to follow. And part of the law that we needed to achieve was to have a 30-day window for public comment. And part of this gathering here is to actually put together an in-person public comment session. And so that's what we will do, I will do in the next hour after this. But what I'm getting at is that one of the super critical things that we're trying to do is not just put a plan together for the sake of putting a plan together. There were many focus groups, there were many interviews, there were many discussions that took place across, you know, our state. And a lot of what we've been doing over the course, for example, of the Broadband Hōʻike, the last 177 convenings, which tomorrow will be the 177th, and that is also on the quiz, I should bring up, was to build capacity. Okay, I want to repeat that, to build capacity. Because what we're doing, what Garrett's team is doing, what we're doing, what Jaren's team is doing is not just doing the implementation, it's to build capacity across the entire state. And your participation in this is representation of your taking it back to your communities and continuing to further build that capacity. So the plan is just a reflection of what it is that's happening in our communities, and it's identifying what we consider sort of the gaps that were expressed to us in what has created the digital divide, and how do we, as Mayor so well described, how do we make sure that the tools that are now available are available to all? And as we move into this digital world, we cannot lose sight of what we call the covered populations. And you know, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this on Kaua'i was because, you know, we want to get to the furthest reaches of our state. I look at this as, you know, Garrett might have a different definition for edge computing, but you know, doing this digital equity work is really the edge of the network. How do we get out to the edge, and how do we continue to foster, you know, those kinds of communities, try to close the gap, try to continue that, and sustain it, not only for the federal government funding that's available, but to sustain it beyond those first 5 years. So that's our goal, and you are all a part of this. So we're not talking, you know, hey, let's go have a good time on Kaua'i for the next couple of days. This is a 7th-generation goal of ours, to make sure that we take this into the future for, you know, the keiki and their keiki and beyond, so that we definitely can leverage, you know, this digital technology. Now, so the digital equity plan is the first step, and my obligation to the NTIA is to, you know, do the 30-day public comment. We will then consolidate, aggregate those public comments. We will then issue the plan in, our due date is end of November. And once the plan is approved, and I encourage you all to go and talk to, you know, we have Jack, we have Laura. You know, if you happen to just see them and say, hey, you guys better approve this plan, because it's very important. I won't hold you back. The thing that will then lead to the next phase is something called the Digital Equity Capacity Grants, okay? So the Digital Equity Capacity Grants are funds, and they're also formula-based, and they will come into Hawaii. And one of the things that we are looking very strongly at is, how does your project that perhaps is seeking funding through the digital equity capacity grant, aligned with what we've done with the plan. Okay, so that's a big requirement. You know, so we want to make sure that that linkage is strong. That's another incentive to kind of read the plan, understand the plan, and what is, you know, how can you continue to now build capacity now and come up with a really good project that we can now sustain this effort over the period of time. So there's this capacity grant that's going to come out, and then that's something that the estate will administer. There will also be something called the competitive grants, and that's open to nonprofits and organizations, and the state doesn't administer that. That is something for you to now compete across the country to get some additional funds. And that will then, you know, help us kind of be the investment and the momentum that kind of carries us into this next phase. So those are some of the three things that I wanted to bring up is, you know, the digital equity plan, which is this, the capacity grants, which are probably going to come around the first or second quarter of next year. We still have to apply for it. So our office will be applying for the capacity grants. And then we will put it out there and have some solicitations of projects and then start to fund projects. And again, continue to build capacity so that everybody throughout the state knows that we're all working together to achieve this digital equity goal that we set for ourselves. So those are some of the things from a federal level. And I'll just add, you know, a couple things that are happening at the state level. So Chung and our team, we're going to be, last session, we did introduce a bill to create a digital equity grant program that's state funded. And I think we recognize that there will be projects that are more suited for federal funding, but we would like to see more flexibility by, we're having basically projects get funded through a state digital equity grant program. So we're looking at approaching the legislature and seeing that they would see the merits in funding a digital equity grant program. And we're confident that it'll get some traction because last session it went all the way to conference. So we're hopeful that, you know, it'll get some traction in terms of passing and actual funding in 2024. Another thing that we're working on is something called the digital economy study. And the reason for doing that is we wanted to create a study that kind of quantified what is Hawaii's digital economy all about. And this is another first for Hawaii. And with that, we can now start to establish a baseline. And with that baseline, we can see how we are improving and contributing to that digital economy. So that's a couple of things that we're working on in DBED. But, you know, it's an exciting time. You all are part of this movement that we've started. And I am just, again, very thankful to see all the people in this audience that are now part of the momentum that we're creating to move digital equity forward. So, thanks, Chung. Mahalo, everybody.
Thank you, Bert. So we heard from Garrett on the kind of the major infrastructure kinds of things that he's planning. Bert on the digital equity piece. Another important component of our work here is what the federal government has labeled as tribal lands, but for us, how that's relevant for us is the Hawaiian homeland. So Jaron is here to share with you what his team is working on in that respect. Jaron.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Jaron. I work for the Department of Hawaiian Homeland. My actual title is not Office of the Chairman. It's actually the Broadband Project Coordinator for the department. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor and Mayor Kaua'i. And I want to introduce our Hawaiian Homes Commissioner for Kaua'i, Commissioner Neves. Yeah, thank you. So the Department of Hawaiian Homeland has a lot of stuff going on. The reason why I have this expression is because it's just a lot. So I started in June, and then I left for Army training for a month. So in reality, I've only been working for the department for 3 months. But a lot has happened in the past 3 months. So we have federal funding. We have $90 million that was allocated or was offered to the department that we had to apply for. We got awarded $17 million to do 1, an infrastructure study on Hawaiian homelands, and 2, to do 4 digital equity projects, which include charter schools, maternal/regular telehealth, digital mapping, and a partnership with the state libraries to help them get become like a community anchor institution. The remainder money, the $73 million, is for our second NOFO to use our infrastructure study to kind of pay for updating infrastructure on Hawaiian homelands, which goes into the 2.5 gigahertz spectrum that was awarded to the department back in 2020. So there's a lot going on, and it's very layered on how interesting our projects are. We have a lot of stuff we have to sort through and kind of revalidate in order to really make sure that the money is going towards what we need it to go to. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the department.
So let me add one thing. The reason the big sigh in the front. So as Chung introduced us and our teams, that's his team.
Yeah, it's just me.
So he hit the ground running and he's sprinting right now. So, any help, please?
Thank you, Jared. You know, yes, for all the teams, there's a lot of work, a lot of planning, and then comes the execution part. So there's a lot of work that, ahead of us. Before I continue, I do want to recognize Lieutenant Governor Suzuki joining us earlier than expected. So, welcome. One of the questions that was asked of me early on about all of our work is what is that penetration goal rate that you're looking for? And my answer is very clear. It's 100%. 100% equity. Garrett mentioned formula-based funding, and that formula was based on having 100% coverage for unserved, underserved, CAI, all of it. So it's my goal has been and always will be 100%, getting that digital equity across the state. One of the key components of our work is community engagement. So you have some notepads with some colored paper in front of you. So if you have some questions, please jot down some questions. We probably won't get through it all. We have about 20 minutes. And if you can write them down, and then there will be some folks walking around, and if you can hand it to them, Kara will be collecting, and then they'll hand it to me. But while they do that, I do want to start the panel with a question. Community engagement is an important piece of our work. And I just wanted to get a sense from each one of you on how you're going to approach that, and if there are any specific timelines to do that community outreach. Garrett, if I can start with you.
Sure, thanks, Chuck. So that is a very big deal as part of the prescribed activities for each of us. For all of the different federal programs, community engagement is absolutely critical. So, those that are outside the effort will say, well, just email everybody, right? No, that's not how this stuff works. This is about getting connected with the people who are not connected. So the community engagement efforts, and it's a little bit different across the different programs, but what we are also trying to do, and sometimes it's a little bit confusing. We operate under slightly different deadlines, slightly different rules, But to the extent possible, today's a good example. What we're trying to do is make sure the outreach to the public, to you folks, is as coordinated as possible. In particular, so you don't have somebody showing up on Monday, somebody else showing up on Tuesday, somebody else showing up on Wednesday, and all saying kind of the same things, talking about slightly different topics, but these things are all related. So part of the outreach is about mass messaging. It is about looking at kind of traditional electronic as well as social and print media, but this is also, especially for Hawaii, about making sure we show up. We show up in communities, not just in the cities, but also as many of the community locations as possible. So I know that BERT folks have already, I'll let them fill in the details, but they've already done a number of waves across all of the islands in preparing the digital equity plan. But in particular for all of our projects as we go forward, specifically in the months of, since we're in October now, specifically in the months of October, November, and December, and then in the execution phase, there's continuous community engagement that's actually part of our execution requirements. So this includes, again, not just the large Zoom session thing or large distribution in print media, but also about making sure that we show up on every island. We show up in as many communities as possible. We're not going to be able to show up to every single one, but to show up at least in all the different regions across the state so that people understand and can ask questions and don't have to be, well, I want to show up on a 300-person Zoom and ask my dumb question. So they can come up to us, ask the not dumb question, and make sure that we get, not only that we get heard, but everybody in the community gets heard. Does that mean everybody's special thing will get handled completely? No. But it is, one of the things that John mentions in the front, the requirements for all of these programs is 100% penetration. So in terms of building access, it's 100% access. In terms of providing digital equity, it's providing 100% access to services. There is still, people can still make a choice. So we're not going to shove it down every community's throat. But it is very important that we provision the access and the availability of services as we go into execution. So there is a planning phase, there's a bunch of stuff that we have to do in preparation going forward. There is still work that happens while things are getting built to continue community engagement, and that actually goes for us throughout the 3 or 4 year period for these project executions.
Thank you, Derek. Bert, same question. How are you going to do the community engagement, and do you have some timeline for that?
That's a great question, and when I need to harken back to a period of time, even before the pandemic, when we were really engaging with community, and this took place as a result of a project that we took on, motivated by the Internet Society, to have something called the Indigenous Connectivity Summit be held in Hawaii in 2019. And one of the things that we did was they were going to support the creation of something called the community network. So we chose to, they asked me to find a place that we could actually do that. And that became the first community network in Hawaii at Puhonua, Waimanalo. And that was, again, in 2019, it was largely grassroots and an effort to pull together resources that could establish this network to connect a community that basically didn't have any access at all. And then what led into the work that we've been doing with the Broadband Hōʻike, it started in March of 2020 when the stay-at-home order was issued. And we convened a small group, probably about 20 or so folks, to really try to address what are the issues that are happening in the community and what are the resources that are coming to bear to address those issues. And I don't know, maybe it's the masochistic side of me, but I pledged at that point in time to continue to convene this gathering every week until we solve this problem. And that became the Broadband Hōʻike. And as I mentioned earlier, we're 177 weeks into this. And what really happened at the beginning was to bring together community, and thanks to Chris Sakuda, who helped to really not only sponsor this effort, but to help galvanize the team to come up with something called the Digital Equity Declaration. And this declaration came about in 2020, and it helped to articulate what is digital equity and what do we as a community declare, so that we could then share it with our legislators, share it with our leadership, and have them take a look at what is happening in our community with respect to digital equity. So that helped to lead into the next legislative sessions. It helped to codify the Digital Equity Declaration. We at the time proclaimed through a number of conversations, interviews, discussions amongst our group, was to adopt something that Kauaʻi back in, I think it was 1824, announced Heapuni Palapala Ko'u, which was declaring that, his nation was going to be a nation of literacy. And so we wanted to embrace sorry, I get a little choked up, but we wanted to look at 200 years ago and look at where have we come 200 years later. And what can we do with the resources that we have to achieve what was like a historical precedence 200 years ago. And so when we embrace that kind of connective tissue through the culture and through this idea of 7 generations, we came up with this Digital Equity Declaration, and that became what we call the kind of guiding star that led us forward. So what we're trying to do right now is, we're trying to continue this work, and it's not subject to any law or any NOFO or any requirement. We feel that it's super important for us to continue to do this so that we can elevate our community in Hawaii, in the middle of the Pacific, that cannot depend on any other state around us. And how do we become, a digital force in the world and build it upon a foundation of Aloha? So, to answer your question, Sean, we will continue this work as long as we can, as long as it's important, and to the point of time when we have taken upon this challenge of 100% achieving digital equity, not because of any law that has been cast on us, but because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Bert. So, Jaron, the same question. Your plans for community outreach and if you have some timelines on that.
Okay, so DHHL is going to take a really aggressive stance on this. We are starting to go out into our homestead communities. We started with Hilo last week, and I started doing site visits of our infrastructure and talking to our homesteaders out there. It's a way different picture that's painted there than it is in my office in Kauaʻi. So yesterday I went to Kekaha and then Anahola, and then in 2 weeks we're gonna come back to Kauaʻi, Molokaʻi, Maui, and then the Big Island. And we're just gonna do it all before December because the Department of Hawaiian Homelands has a very, very tight timeline. I have approximately 5 years to complete all of these projects. That means shovels in the ground and things built. So it may sound like a long time, but 5 years is not a long time. So I cannot dilly-dally and wait. So again, the department is going to be very aggressive with this. So we started outreach last week, and we're going to be continually doing outreach to our homestead communities to make sure that the projects that we are planning have beneficiary feedback, because every homestead is different. They have all different needs, and I can't just use one blanket approach.
Thank you, Jared. One question from the audience. This is, I guess all three of you can answer this question, but to start with Garrett. What are your plans for any non-deployment activities? Should there be some funding left over from infrastructure?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so for those of you that have dug into the details, and we've really been talking about this for years now, the BEAD program in particular does allow, after the initial priorities, so first 2-3 priorities are all about deploying network access to locations, so residential locations, CAIs, community institutions. But in addition to that, the BEAD program can fund a number of other activities, including digital equity. It can supplement funds from the digital equity side of the house. It can also provide investments in workforce development, in stuff like information security needs of the community. So this is not the technical stuff behind the scenes, but this is the in-your-face in terms of when you're using access to the internet. So it does have the capability to fund a lot of these efforts. Now, while our NTIA folks don't like me to say this too much, but based on the numbers that we're working with now and that we have been working with in the formula deployment, we do expect there to be funds available in the BEAD allocation to provide some of these additional works. So just to give you some gross numbers, the BEAD number from the federal government is about $150 million. There is a 25% match requirement when we execute the project. So fortunately, a big chunk of that is already available in state funding, and our administration has made a commitment to get the rest of the base 25% commitment. There's also the potential for getting some matching from the private sector as we build those efforts. So if you take the 150 federal number, the 50 or so match number, the pool is about 200 million. We don't expect, based on the best guess of deployment right now, that we would actually consume the full amount when we're going in. So we do expect there to be numbers available, in particular to supplement the digital equity spending and to make sure that we can do stuff in the communities, not just provision access, but make sure we can provision meaningful access. I'll give you a good example. One of the programs that actually Bert's folks have already started to spin up is around the concept of community digital navigators. So these are people that are from communities, that are familiar with their communities, and that are trained, that we can provide training to, so they can deliver services and assistance in their communities. That's the formula that works the best. It's already demonstrated by like the HUD folks that use telehealth navigators for a while. It's already demonstrated that if you take a person from that community that has some familiarity, that can, there is some relationship that is pre-existing, provide training, and that's really the most effective way to deliver wraparound services in support of this area on a broad basis. It's not we're going to provide some old guy from Honolulu to come around and tell everybody what to do. That doesn't work. We already know that doesn't work. Everybody in the room knows that doesn't work. But it is about to make sure that we can provide that investment in the training and supports for the community digital navigators to make it work. And BERT folks have already started the effort on the DE side, and we expect that we will be able to provide supplemental funding as we go through execution of the BEAD program. The exact numbers to be determined. We have to work through, like I said, we have some planning stuff we have to work through, budget narratives that we have to get approved by our federal sponsors, but we do expect there to be enough money to make the last mile investments happen and these other services.
Thank you, Jared. Any comments you can make on that in that regard? Perfect.
So just to give you a sense of the investment that is currently being made, and Garrett referred to the non-deployment funds that could potentially be a result of the BEAD program, Broadband Equity Access and Deployment. I spoke a little bit about the capacity grants, and the capacity grants are also formula-based, and we're looking at something on the order of 12 million. I'm still waiting for our friends at NTIA to actually announce when those formula amounts actually become official. we are entering into a phase where I think we all admit that technology is moving very quickly. And as you see some of the new things that people are frequently talking about, whether it's AI or cloud computing or gaming or any application that you can think of that are like state-of-the-art virtual reality. What that does is it creates this environment where the technology continues to move. How do we make sure that we are continuing to also move the digital equity side of that equation? And so, what we have to really start to really think about is this investment that is being made now is only an investment, and how does Hawaii continue to take this into the next phase and continue to have this continuum support our communities across the state? So the challenge that I'm putting out there is, we have the opportunity to look at some of these investments now, but you got to keep in mind what's the sustainability model and how do we continue to fund these efforts moving forward. That's why we want to start, have this narrative around the state digital equity grant program. How do we continue to have affordability? I didn't speak too much about the affordable connectivity program, but that's another one that our office is very much engaged in. So again, we have this chance right now to do a lot of this work because of the federal government's investment. But how do we now take this and continue this work after the 5 years? And that's a really, I think, important thing to start to get across the entire community, to be more holistic about this effort to achieve the digital equity goals that we've set for ourselves.
Sharon, I actually have a separate question for you. I actually have quite a bit of HHO questions, so I just wanted just a quick one. So the question reads, the initial NTIA proposal included community broadband networks. Can you speak a little bit about that?
So that's the second project in our original no-flow. So we rebudgeted that one and we just changed it to a mapping project. So what we're doing is we're actually working with a contractor to kind of get digital mapping for the whole state. And what I really need from that project is I need Esri files. I need maps. I need maps of connectivity, wireless and wired, on our homesteads, so we really know where the actual gaps are. I have homesteads that are on copper or on fiber, so the range of data that they can get, it varies drastically across the islands. So that would help me make a better business decision on where to really push funds and to make sure that these funds are allocated in the most efficient manner possible. So that's what that project has reshaped and refocused to.
Hey, Chuck, can I add one thing? So this is specific to DHHL. One of the things that we've been working with our NTIA program leads on is part of the BEAD deployment. So one of the things that is really important is to make sure that we don't duplicate investment from different federal programs, right? So on the surface, you see DHHL has TBCP, the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, lots of acronyms. And then there's some legacy programs around that funded our traditional carriers. So Hawaiian Telecom has some RDOF and CAF money that hits particular areas. And then we're supposed to come in with the BEAD stuff and dance through all the gaps. For Hawaiian Homelands in particular, one of the things we are in extended discussions with our NTIA folks are about is to make sure that we, as we look through how the BEAD money is being funded or being planned for expense, is to make sure we can stopgap any gaps that show up on Hawaiian Homelands where the TBCP money may fall short. So I wanted to add that, so it's not just the 90 that goes and focused on the DHHL lands, but also the BEAD monies will also fill in some gaps where the gaps occur. So we have to set aside some reserve, make sure we can plan the activities together, but to make sure that we don't leave holes in Hawaiian Homelands after these investments are actually realized.
Thank you, Jared. So we're out of time, but I want to thank the panel, and I do encourage everyone to reach out to any one of us if you have any further questions or if you have any follow-up discussions you want to do. So thank you very much for your presentation and your Q&A. Thank you.